So I made a video about changing my iRacing setups using ChatGPT suggestions, and you guys had a lot of feedback for me. We're gonna use all your suggestions and we're gonna make a better video. We're gonna do it scientifically, we're gonna be more thorough, we're gonna be consistent. Heck! First off, we're gonna drive a GT3 car around the Red Bull ring. We're gonna do it consistently so that we have a nice benchmark. And we're gonna figure out what we don't like about iRacing's fixed setup. And this will help us engineer a prompt that we can hand deliver to our Lord and Savior ChatGPT so that it can recommend some setup changes. We'll also use some differently worded prompts that kind of say the same thing to see if ChatGPT provides us with the same information and is not scamming us. To round out the video, I'll walk you guys through what I've been changing in the iRacing setup based on the ChatGPT tips, and then we'll see if the ChatGPT setup has a positive impact on my driving, which can either mean that my lap times improve or I can trust the car better. Now let's get on track to set those benchmark laps. Now we've driven 16 laps on the iRacing fixed setup and set an average lap time of 1:33.785. Now there are some problems I want to improve on, namely that I felt that the car had some trouble with wheel spin in turn 3. Sometimes I felt a bit of oversteer in turn 4, and I think the aero might be reduced a little to gain us some speed on the straights. I've created 3 different prompts for ChatGPT to figure out how we can improve on the fixed setup iRacing provides. So here's the first prompt: setup changes for GT3 Corvette in iRacing, just very general. I want less wheel spin in slow corners, I want less oversteer on corner entry, and I want more speed on the straights. So there's a lot of information here. So the first thing it gives us is increased rear wing angle. Well, that's gonna clash with more speed on the straights immediately. Soften the rear springs and anti-roll bar. Maybe. Lower rear tire pressures. Very daring. And differential setting. Adjust the differential to provide more lock under acceleration, which can help reduce wheel spin. I think the simplest answer would just be more traction control. Reducing oversteer on corner entry. Softer front suspension. Soften the front springs and anti-roll bar. Softening the front anti-roll bar is gonna increase oversteer. I don't think ChatGPT really knows what it's doing. Brake bias, interesting one as well. Move it slightly towards the rear. This will definitely make us oversteer more. Increase front downforce. Well, that's gonna clash again with the increased speed on the straights that we want. And more front downforce, I think, is gonna lead to more oversteer actually.
No! God, please, no!
If you don't know anything about setups, it's just giving you false information, which is not good. With this first prompt, we've given ChatGPT very little info to work with, which might be the cause of it giving us the completely wrong and false tips. So let's take a look at the next prompt to see if we get the same awful results if we change the wording just a little bit, or if the results change completely. Can you tweak the fixed setup for the GT3 Corvette in iRacing with the following criteria? Kind of the same thing, but just worded a little differently. So it spits out a lot of information and also some different stuff. So in the previous prompt, it also talked about preload, not about these ramp angles. Finally, we get some traction control to reduce wheel spin in slow corners. I think this is the first thing I would do. For reducing oversteer on corner entry, so softening the front anti-roll bar is gonna maybe increase oversteer a little bit. But stiffening the rear is also gonna help to increase oversteer a bit. I don't think ChatGPT really knows what it's doing. Increasing the speeds on the straights. So aerodynamics, reduce the rear wing, Adjust the front splitter. Just reducing aerodynamic drag will help you get to higher top speeds, of course. So that's good. It's also talking about gearing again, so it's kind of consistent in that way. But I don't think we got much better information with the second prompt, as we asked it the same kind of stuff, only worded a bit differently. Now let's take a look at our third prompt to see if ChatGPT's answers start to improve or if they remain hopeless. Can you tweak the fixed setup for iRacing's Corvette GT3 at the Red Bull Ring? I want to get rid of the following problems. Wheel spin in the slow corners, oversteer on corner entry, and of course not enough speed on the straight. The adjustments that it wants us to make. First off, increase the rear wing angle. Not gonna help us at all in slow corners, as we will not have any downforce. Increasing the differential preload. That will actually help to create more oversteer in slow corners. So that's all. It's got this one wrong as well. Then the traction control, if available, it is available. Use traction control if you got wheel spin. That's very logical. Then the second one, oversteer on corner entry. Let's see, the brake bias slightly forward. Ooh, front anti-roll bars. Soften the front anti-roll bars. Also instilling more oversteer. The rear anti-roll bar, stiffen it up. Okay, yeah, I don't think this is gonna help. The dampers, just a front rebound damping to help the front tires stay in contact with the road. That's actually one that might help. Not enough speed on the straights. Decrease the rear wing angle for reduced drag. That's very logical. It's talking about gear ratios again. The ride height, lower the car for less aerodynamic drag. I suppose that is alright. We're gonna see if ChatGPT has the magic touch or if it just destroys this car completely. The first thing it tells us to do is to reduce the rear wing angle by 1 or 2 clicks. We're gonna do 2 clicks and we're gonna see if it works out. Increase the preload differential by 1 or 2 clicks. So we're gonna add 2 clicks to that. We're gonna move the brake bias 2% forward to help us with stability. Maybe it'll help. For the front anti-roll bar, it wanted us to soften it up with 1 click. So we're gonna put it 1 higher. The rear anti-roll bar is already at its stiffest setting. We're gonna increase the front rebound dampers with 2 clicks. I don't know if it meant the high speed or the low speed, but we're gonna see. Then the ride height, we're gonna lower the car a couple of millimeters as ChatGPT is telling us. So I feel like 40 is good, and I think we gotta, that rear is gonna be very low, but we're gonna see how it works out. I don't think we're messing too much with the aero balance now. So we're gonna increase the traction control to a higher setting. We're just gonna add 2 to it. Alright, beautiful. So now we're gonna take this monstrosity out on track and we're gonna see how well it drives. I'll tell you my first impressions and then we're gonna set 15 laps to see how the average has changed. Alright, so we're coming here to our first hot lap. And we're gonna see how well this new setup drives. Yeah, during my warm-up lap, it didn't feel that bad. It's just chosen a lot of interesting methods to resolve the problems that I've given it. But the car is not completely unstable. I have to be honest. I thought it would be worse. But it actually drives kind of alright. With the traction control here in turn 3, it helps to reduce wheel spin, so that's good. And in this corner, we're not having too much trouble with wheel spin either. We're not oversteering on corner entry anymore, so in some way it has actually fixed maybe our problems, or I don't know what is happening. I think it's oh geez, it's very strange. Logically speaking, this should be a way worse setup than before, but I don't know. I don't know what's happened. I feel quite alright with this setup. I don't feel like I'm not in control. Got a little bit on off track there. Let's see what our first time is here. So already in 133s with an off track, but not that much of... I thought with the lowered ride height, those curbs would be a bigger problem as well. Not really. It's of course a couple of millimeters, but in racing, every tiny little bit matters. Yeah, the car feels quite alright, so I have no problem with it currently. Maybe if you start really pushing it, stuff will happen, but it's a little bit more responsive, I would say. Depending on the... I think the changes to the mechanical grip have made it a little bit more responsive in some ways. And the reduced aero have made it at higher speeds somewhat less responsive, but it's still working fine, if I'm completely honest. Now, without an off-track, I don't know if that's a 132. I don't think so. 133.2. Now, I'm gonna set the other 13 laps, I guess, and we'll see how the averages change. See you in a bit. So, with this ChatGPT setup, we've actually improved our lap times from a 133.785 to a 133.693. But in my laps with the ChatGPT setup, I actually had a couple of mistakes, one little spin that I counted in the average of the lap times. So overall, the laps that went well on the ChatGPT setup were actually faster than what I could do on the fixed setup. I think we're actually looking at a couple of reasons why I'm faster on the ChatGPT setup. One, I've had a lot more practice at the Red Bull Ring and the Corvette. And secondly, I think it is a somewhat more aggressive setup. You can actually go faster with it. But I also think that because it is a little more aggressive, you can more easily make mistakes with it. So I was a way more solid driver on the fixed setup. That counts for something as well. But I think this comment from Mr. Huizingveld, he really nails the point. I'm not an esports driver. I attributed the problems with my driving style to the car. So I asked ChatGPT for setup changes that will reduce turn and oversteer, while my actual problem is my driving. I think that becomes very apparent if we change the setup in completely a different way and I start to drive fine, if that makes sense. In conclusion, I think ChatGPT is a very unreliable source when it comes to setup tips. I think going to a human who knows what the hell they're doing is a way better solution than asking ChatGPT, because sometimes it's just giving the complete opposite answer of what you're looking for. But if you're a complete beginner, you won't know this. You won't know that softening up the front anti-roll bars will give you more oversteer. And if ChatGPT says it doesn't, you're gonna have a bad time. So I hope you like this more scientific look at ChatGPT as a resource for making setups. My verdict is that as of right now, it's completely useless. Depending on the prompt you give it, you're gonna get different answers. And you don't want that. Check out some real books, some YouTubers who know what the hell they're talking about, that explain setup to you, or just buy setups. I don't know. Anyway, I hope you liked this video. Let me know in the comments down below what your take is on all of this. And I hope to see you in the next video. I love you guys. Bye bye.